Dunkeld Lectern. The Dunkeld Lectern is a medieval lectern which was one of the most prized possessions of St Stephen's Church, St Albans, England. The 150 kg brass reading desk stands approximately 1.6 meters high and takes the form of a large eagle with outspread wings, with the bird perched on an orb supported by a turn shaft, an eagle lectern. Engraved on the orb is a Latin inscription, Georgius Creichton Episcopus Dunkeldensis, translation, George Creichton Bishop of Dunkeld. The lectern was looted from Holyrood Abbey by the English army in 1544 and found its way to the St Albans church. Requests from Scotland for its repatriation were rebuffed. In 1984, it was taken from the church by a Scottish nationalist group and did not reappear until 1999. Since then it has been on display at the National Museum of Scotland, although its ownership remains in dispute. Origin: George Creighton was abbot at Holyrood Abbey, Edinburgh, from 1515 to 1528. He was presented with the lectern at the time of the visit of Pope Alexander VI to mark his being made Bishop of Dunkeld. Creighton in turn presented it to Holyrood Abbey. The lectern was plundered from Edinburgh by the troops of Sir Richard Lee in 1544. History: in the autumn of 1543, Scotland and England signed two agreements which are often referred to as the Treaties of Greenwich. The first guaranteed peace between the two countries for a fixed period of time, and the second affirmed that an arranged marriage would take place between Prince Edward of England, the son of Henry Roman VIII, and Mary, Queen of Scots, soon after her 10th birthday. At the beginning of 1544, the relationship between England and Scotland began to worsen, as it had done so many times before. The Scots reneged on the treaties, which drove Henry Roman VIII into a fury. His response was swift and brutal. He directed the commander-in-chief of the English army, the Earl of Hertford, to put all to fire and sword, burn Edinburgh town, so it may remain forever a perpetual memory of the vengeance of God. For there the Scots falsehood and disloyalty. Overthrow the castle. Sack Holyrood House. In May 1544, the English army arrived by boat to destroy Edinburgh. The army landed near the port of Leith, from whence it marched on Edinburgh. The invaders pillaged and laid waste the town and the surrounding areas and villages, excepting only the castle. They destroyed Holyrood Abbey and carried off much of its property as plunder. Henry hoped his aggression would force the Scots to accept the marriage treaty. The Earl of Hertford was accompanied to Edinburgh by Sir Richard Lee, who was a military engineer, a destroyer, and builder of fortifications. His services to the English crown for his work in Scotland and elsewhere was formally recognized in 1544, when he was knighted and appointed surveyor of the king's works. He was granted the ground covered by St Albans Monastery, but not the church, which was bought by the townspeople, Sopwell Priory, and the rectorship of St Stephen's Church. This fact, when taken with circumstantial evidence, suggests it was probably at this time the Holyrood Abbey lectern found its way into this Hertfordshire church, with the other Scottish plunder of Sir Richard Lee. English Civil War. In 1642 the English Civil War began, and St Albans became a parliamentarian stronghold. Parliament passed new laws which authorized the destruction of religious images and articles. In response, many religious items and artifacts were hidden by Anglican clergy from their Puritan prosecutors. In August 1643 more draconian measures were introduced, and continuity of the St Stephen's parish registers is broken, perhaps hinting at the turbulent nature of those times. It was during this period of national upheaval that the lectern disappeared. Who removed it and exactly why remains a mystery to this day. Over 100 years were to pass before the lectern came to light once more. In 1748 the Montagu family tomb in the chancel of St Stephen's Church was opened up for an interment, and the lectern was found lying in the grave. It was retrieved and brought back into use. Scottish requests for return. Since the 18th century, Scottish academics, clergy, and patriots have sought the return of the lectern. A review of the history of the lectern in the newspaper The Scottish Guardian dated 2 May 1879 finished with a plea for readers to find a way to secure the lectern for our new cathedral in Edinburgh. Who will take up the matter? In November 1879 an approach from the Lord Provost of Edinburgh was rebuffed by the Vicar of St Stephen's, the Rev. Marcus R. Southwell. In December of that year he wrote to the Lord Provost, sent his best wishes, and expressed the utmost repugnance to parting with the Creighton Lectern. Nor did further approaches made by Edinburgh Corporation in 1931 and 1936. Attempted repatriation. One day in 1972 the lectern was found lying in pieces halfway down the nave of the church. Intruders were disturbed in the course of their nefarious activities, but did not leave empty-handed, taking with them 3 small lions from the base which supported the lectern. Return. In 1982 the lectern returned to Scotland for the first time in over 400 years. Permission was given by the Church of England for the lectern to appear in Angels, Nobles and Unicorns, an exhibition of medieval Scottish art at the National Museum of Antiquities of Scotland in Edinburgh. Its appearance at the exhibition caused a great deal of upset, and letters to the press demanded that it should remain in Scotland, but when the exhibition ended the lectern was returned to St Stephen's Church. In the past 150 years or so, the clergy and academics had not succeeded in resolving the issue to the satisfaction of some of the Scots people. In November 1984 a group of individuals broke into the church and removed the lectern. The Scottish group Seol Nan Gaedheal Seed of the Gael contacted the press and reported they had the lectern. They provided a hostage photograph and wrote, "In the 15 years after the lectern disappeared, the rights and wrongs of the matter were debated on television and in the press many times. Representatives of the established churches of Scotland and England met on many occasions and invested much effort and time to resolve the matter. Dialogue between all parties was nurtured and helped by the activities of Inverness press and journal reporter John Vass. He worked closely with the vicar Rev. John Pragnell, David Maxwell, convener of the Church of Scotland's Artistic Committee, and David Caldwell of the Royal Museum of Scotland to get the lectern returned for permanent display in Scotland. Criminal endeavour prevails. Over the years, Vass received a number of anonymous communications from those who held the lectern. The kidnappers laid down 2 conditions before the Dunkeld lectern would be released: that it was to stay in Scotland, and that no action would be taken to find and prosecute those responsible. St Stephen's parish made an offer that should the lectern be forthcoming, the parish would see that it was returned to Scotland. In recognition of this promise, St Margaret's Church, Barnhill, Dundee offered St Stephen's Church a Victorian replica of the lectern to replace the one removed in 1984. The Seol Nan Gaedheal failed to respond positively. The Church of Scotland decided to proceed, and in 1995 presented St Stephen's with the Barnhill lectern before Pragnell moved to his new parish. The St Stephen's vicar had been pivotal in the efforts to bring about a satisfactory conclusion of this matter since he arrived in the parish in 1991. Current whereabouts. In 1999 the Dunkeld Lectern mysteriously turned up in an Edinburgh Arts Centre after being missing for 15 years. It is believed that it had been hidden in a Highland grave for the intervening period. It has since been moved to the National Museum of Scotland, initially on a 3-year loan. A permanent loan agreement is being negotiated between the National Museums of Scotland and the Church of St Stephen, still the legal owner of the Dunkeld Lectern.